Osborne, Koch. He's playing Obs on mid-range. So as much as I like the mono green aggro deck, and I'm really excited as Steven as our last undefeated player, this is the kind of strategy that I think would be very hostile toward mono beatdown, green beatdown.
Attacking decks with no reach, with no burn spells, are typically not that good against Obs on mid-range.
Yeah.
The deck is good at shoring up the ground, blocking, and then overpowering.
Saying Matt's strategy should be something along the lines of kill spells on the big creatures, Siege Rhino and Courser for the small creatures.
Exactly.
Wooded Foothills starts the game for Steven Girdner. He is one and is on the play. Matt is actually on a 6-card hand here, so it starts on Sandstep Citadel. And this is something where I'm wondering how many times Steven played this matchup on day one. I mean, I'm sure a non-zero Obson's very popular. The one thing I do like is that we're seeing all these 1-drop, 2-drop beatdown decks. Stuff like Black-White Warriors yesterday, we had that on camera. I think they position well against things like Esper Dragons.
I think you need to curve out really smoothly to be good against Esper Dragons. Esper Dragons does stumble a little bit in the first couple turns of the game, so if you can capitalize on it, that's very good. I think the black cards in Warriors, especially Thoughtseize and Duress, are pretty good utility. Steven Girdner's got a couple sweet cards here to try to break serve. Ranger's Guile can be very efficient against certain removal spells, but I do like just trying to curve out as efficiently as possible because Esper Dragons can be slow out of the gates.
All right, well, remember, in this aspect of Hydro deck, one thing you get is a lot of good 2-drops. He's going to start with Rattleclaw Mystic. That's actually not one of his double green mana symbols. But if you look at this, almost all of Steven's draws should start with a creature on 1 or 2. At 2, he has things like Rattleclaw Mystic, Avatar of the Resolute, and as you mentioned, Swordwise Centaur.
Rattleclaw Mystic appearing in Steven's deck for a variety of reasons. You know, he's an attacking deck, so it's much better than Caryatid for his purposes. Also, it's another morph, and he does have the Death Mist Raptor package in his deck.
All right, going back, Matt, to Osborne Koch, just with 2 tap lands. That was a Temple on turn 2. It opens a window for some beatdowns, and Steven will go ahead and serve with Rattleclaw Mystic. That's not going to ramp. It hits in for 2. Matt's down to 18, and now a 3-drop gets to join the table. Look like maybe just be that morph package with Death Mist Raptor.
And these fetch lands in Steven's deck, they are not here to facilitate any sort of splash. There is 1 copy of Become Immense in his main deck, and his deck is mostly creatures, so some greasing of the wheels for Delve spells is nice because he's not naturally going to put a lot of cards in his graveyard.
Yeah, and I mean, he's actually showing he has 22 lands and is playing a full 8 green fetch lands. So I think at a certain point, he's just using it as deck thinning.
Yep.
Death Mist Raptor joins Rattleclaw Mystic on the board. Now the pressure is going to be on Matt to have a kill spell, as the creatures are starting to amass here. Siege Rhino was the draw for Matt. Mentioned before, the pairing of Siege Rhino and kill spells is going to be the backbone of Matt's strategy. So he has the Rhino. The question is, he's going to need the kill spells.
But Steven has a little bit more staying power than your typical version of mono green aggro, again, because of this Dem Protector Death Mist Raptor. We've seen people be able to stay in games against more controlling decks, even as the game has dragged on the back of those 2 cards.
And Matt, his 3rd land at Temple again. He scries, keeps the card on top. And remember, he was on a 6-card hand, despite having a powerful hand, with I believe multiple copies of Siege Rhino. The fact that he, on the draw, has gone to tap land each turn could be really punishing.
Yep. I mean, these mid-range and these control decks, this is one of their vulnerabilities.
All right, pre-combat, you see Steven, tapping. What would you play pre-combat? That's going to be Surrak, the Hunt Caller. And he'll cast it. And it was a risk he took here by not swinging with Rattleclaw, and that Bile-Blight will take care of Death Mist, so Surrak won't have haste and no damage for Matt this turn.
The 1 main deck copy of Bile-Blight was a critical part of Matt winning the match against Joe Lisette when we had him on camera earlier, and coming up in a big way here. If he doesn't kill that Death Mist Raptor there with Surrak coming down, it's probably too much damage for him to stabilize.
Yeah, looking at Steven's hand, he has a lot more 3-drops to come. Copies of cards like Boon Satyr and Reverend Hunter, as well as another Death Mist Raptor, all waiting in his hand.
Reverend Hunter is a very nice payout for this kind of deck.
Absolutely. Counting its own green mana symbol and those of the other creatures, right now it would be a 5/5 for 3. Speaking of Death Mist Raptor, Matt plays some copies of his own. He'll play a tap land and Death Mist back. Matt is on the 3 Death Mist Raptor, 4 Den Protector version of mid-range. As we go back over to Girdner. We may actually get into this green attrition fight where Death Mist Raptors start to trade. Girdner has 1 in the graveyard already, a 2nd one in hand.
But Matt's Den Protectors are going to be a lot better than Steven's, because Matt's are going to be looping things like Bile-Blight and Hero's Downfall, and Steven's are going to be looping creatures, most likely, that can get swallowed up by Siege Rhino.
Steven, he's going to dig in for the long fight here, deciding what 3-drop he wants. And he'll go with Reverend Hunter. That's the 5-5. What this does is Surrock can give Reverend Hunter haste. He certainly has 8 power on the board and a crashing swing of 2 5-power creatures. So I guess the question for Steven there was whether or not he wanted to have Rattleclaw Mystic join the fight as well.
I think with a deck with no reach, it's too juicy there for Matt to block. And Steven's missed some land drops too, so I think he's got pretty big plans for this Rattleclaw Mystic. It does look attractive to get in for 10, but...
Oh, wow, and here comes Aspect of Hydra. This is a 4 of that you really get access to in mono green decks. So that's going to be a pump spell of +4/+4 for 1 mana, his devotion being 4. So Death Mist will trade with Surrock, but that unblocked Death Mist Raptor hitting in for 9 pushes Matt down to 9.
So many good deals.
This card's... In a mono green deck, this card is fantastic. I mean, Giant Growth is a card that just on the surface is strong enough to be constructed playable. And you see there, he just got an extra point on his Giant Growth.
For sure. I mean, Reverend Hunter, an aspect of the Hydra, a lot of these cards that Steven's playing, the core of this deck has a bunch of fine constructed level Magic cards on them. And the ceiling on his Green Devotion cards is extremely high.
Temple here from Matt Osborne Koch. Now here is where he starts making Siege Rhinos. He's been able to trade Death Mists. That'll put him back up to 12, make a pretty decent sized blocker. Not a big enough blocker for the Reverend Hunter though.
No, Siege Rhino is a little small for this party.
As we go back to Steven. Drawing here, he still has another copy of Death Mist in hand. He has a Boon Satyr. If he can hit that 5th land, a Boon Satyr could be excellent.
Yep.
He does not. Reverend Hunter, the 5/5, will just come in.
And Matt has to have some low amount of concern here, but greater than 0, that he might get killed if he doesn't block, based on the cards he's seen thus far.
You see in Steven's hand, and this is a 1-of that I really think will be very important in this matchup. He has a copy of Ranger's Guile in his hand. And when the answers to something like Reverend Hunter for Matt involve double blocking or a kill spell, that Ranger's Guile really can do damage. But speaking of that, how about Become Immense plus Ranger's Guile? That's +7/+7. That's a full 12 damage. Matt didn't block. It's going to kill him.
So when I said before, you know, low but greater than 0 chance that Matt could be dead if he doesn't block, well, there you go. The one Ranger's Guile in the main deck alongside the 1 Become Immense, and that's Xaxes.
Wow, so game 1 over to the mono green aggro player, Steven Girdner, out of the gates, taking the first game off Matt. And you guys see his face, it's a nod, you know, strong plays, but not really sure what happened.
Oh, I mean, you know, you got to give a little nod of acknowledgement right there. Matt's curve was Bile Blight, Death Mist Raptor, Siege Rhino. That's not a bad curve against a beatdown deck on the draw. That's actually pretty close for what you would ask for.
Yeah, now he was a turn delayed on all those plays because his lands were tapped.
But still, a fine sequence of plays there from Matt, and it just was not enough.
Yes, all right, so going over to the sideboard, we'll start with Osborne Koch. This is a pretty standard deck, and when you're playing in something like mono green, it looks a lot like the other creature decks. You know, you're going to board out some of the high-end stuff and really just go in for all the kill spells. So you see things like he has an End Hostilities and a Crux of Fate. Sweepers figure to be excellent against mono green. An extra Hero's Downfall seems good for him. Even something like Dromoka's Command he can use to fight a creature. I guess he doesn't know that Steven is playing cards like Boon Satyr, but there is that, so there's a chance they can get an enchantment as well. Even the 2 copies of Drown in Sorrow don't seem terrible here.
Drown in Sorrow is pretty good against Steven's deck. Now, the cards that Steven showed in game 1 do not seem that susceptible. It was only really Rattleclaw Mystic, but Steven's working with Elvish Mystic, a lot of 3/2s for 2. Drown in Sorrow is a good card, but I'm not sure if Matt's going to bring it in based on the cards we saw in game 1.
It's interesting. So you see Matt with his sideboard kind of trying to theory craft it out. So you're right, he saw nothing great to Drown in Sorrow, but he did see a card like Aspect of Hydra. So you might see him think, okay, if my opponent's playing Aspect of Hydra, what are some likely candidates to be in his deck? And I think something like Avatar of the Resolute, it's very hard to think of an Aspect of Hydra deck that wouldn't play that card, for example. So if he's able to go there and say, hey, that card's probably there, Elvish Mystic is probably there, in addition to the Rattleclaw I saw, at that point, Drown in Sorrow becomes pretty palatable. But you have to take that step and start boarding against cards that you actually haven't seen.
Exactly. So, you know, Matt has the theory cracked a little bit. I think that Drown in Sorrow is good here. I think it's more likely than not that Matt brings it in, but you're right, he does have to kind of suss this out on the fly a little bit because he didn't see all the cards in Steven's deck and probably has not seen this deck in the past. On Steven's side, we've got 2 copies of Back to Nature, a Reclamation Sage, 2 copies of Gather Courage, a Feed the Clan, 2 Nihilus Disciples, a Hunt the Hunter, 3 Ranger's Guiles, 3 Mistcutter Hydras. I really like 4 of the cards in the sideboard, the 3 copies of Ranger's Guile, the 1 copy of Hunt the Hunter. I think those are likely to come in. I also think the 1 copy of Reclamation Sage is a pretty low opportunity cost card to bring in against Courser Crew Fix decks in general. Not sure if Steven will make that, but I do like the Ranger's Guile to fizzle removal spells, and Hunt the Hunter should be good against Matt's various green creatures, especially Sea Triumph.
Someone's been playing a lot of obs on mid-range. 4 Ranger's Guile, that sounds miserable to play against. That's the stuff of...
It's the heroic game plan. You're trying to use your 1-mana spells to trade with their 3-mana spells. What's nice for Steven is a lot of his creatures don't require work to be that big. They kind of come that way anyway. And Ranger's Guile is a great protection spell against Hero's Downfall and similar effects.
A card I really like, and I mentioned in Steven's sideboard that we really haven't seen too much of, but seems great against Esper Dragons, is 3 Mistcutter Hydras. So this guy hasn't seen play really for a year. But you see these Esper Dragons decks, rather than being all kill spells, against aggro decks, they like to do things like really sit behind the brick wall of Silumgar the Drifting Death and slowly create card advantage, leave up a couple Silumgar Scorns, and this is a really punishing creature for against someone who wants to do that.
If you're trying to play with counter spells and block with blue creatures, Mistcutter Hydra is about as punishing as it gets, and Steven's got 3 copies. He does have 2 copies of Nykthos in his deck, which I'm kind of hot and cold on. On one hand, he does have some things to do with a lot of mana, most notably the Mistcutter Hydras in the sideboard. The other hand, his deck is really sensitive for double green on turn 2, and an early Nykthos might be a big cost.
All right, so right now we are on day 2 of the Star City Games Open here in Portland. One of the things we talked about on day 1 was where our Players' Championship race was. Joe Lissette on the West Coast trying to make up some ground after Ross Merriam won the Open last week. At a record of 3-4, he did not day 2, so we figured the standings should be largely unchanged, at least for the main event. Now Joe's going to have a chance to make up some ground in some of the IQs on Sunday.
He is playing right now in the Legacy IQ about 30 feet in front of me. So Joe is battling, trying to pick up some points. He top 4'd the IQ in Cleveland last week after failing to make the day 2 of that Open Series. But yeah, an opportunity here to make up a lot of ground. Went really poorly for Joe, but there's still an opportunity here to make up some of the ground on Ross and Kevin Jones in the IQ.
Yep. For players like Jones and Merriam, a good sign, at least for this weekend.
Yeah.
And on to game 2. So Matt Osborne, Koch, he'll be on the play. And there is some pressure on Girdner's draws. When you think about the kind of draws that Matt can keep, they're fairly similar. He maybe a 2-mana kill spell, a 3-mana kill spell, a 3-mana or 4-mana creature. But if Steven gets a fast draw and has something like Ranger's Guile to protect it, there aren't a lot of routes of interaction for Matt.
Right. The best case scenario for him is his sweepers. Those are cards that Steven really can't interact with very well, other than trying to attrition him out with Den Protector and Deathness Raptor. So Sparks of Fate and End Hostilities, I think, are Matt's best sideboard cards here, but the spot removal is a little bit troubled. 4 Ranger's Guiles on the sideboard, it can do a lot to trip that up. And blocking is tough too, because Steven is hitting the ground faster, his creatures are larger, he has other pump spells, so Matt's got a couple pretty powerful lines of attack here, but a lot of the things that you would expect Obzon to be able to do to have a good matchup against creatures is going to be a little bit harder here.
All right, so here's a pretty interesting one. This is an uncommon out of the new set, Dragons of Tarkir. This is Servant of the Scale. It's a 2-of in his deck. In a lot of ways, this feels to me like Arcbound Worker of green decks.
Yeah, this is, he's got to have something here to grease the wheels a little bit. He's also got Avatar of the Resolute, so they're, naturally you're in the hunt for these kind of creatures. And again, Devotion decks, beat down Devotion decks, they need to play with 1-drops. You just sort of got to get your critical mass of stuff in play.
Yeah, 1/1 for 1. When it dies, it gets to throw its counters onto another creature. Actually, just a common, not an uncommon. But there are some ways for him to get counters. Well, does he get counters on his creatures? This is just a 1/1. It interacts with Avatar of the Resolute. But yeah, just... Yep. And one thing you see Matt turn to with Fleecemane Lion, there is the danger of this guy not really squaring off very well against some of the creatures in Standard.
At the end of the day, it is a 1/1 for 1, but he's got to get the ball rolling, got to get his Devotion count up. Definitely complicates combat on the other side of the table.
Yeah, turn 2 play for Girdner was just a fetch land. He's not going to crack as of yet, as we go over to Matt.
We've seen this before, it's Judge's Familiar and Cloudfin Raptor. These decks have played some not so attractive one-drops in the past.
Yeah, and that really is a consequence of just playing a devotion deck. And I mean, Steven, it's not devotion, but he does have a couple Nykthoses and aspect of Hydra. There's some pressure just to get some green mana symbols on the table, even, in any way you can.
Exactly. It just depends on how good the payoffs are. Last year's Blue Devotion deck with Thassa and Master Waves, it was the payoffs were definitely there.
Sometimes Joseph Familiar even traded with a spell.
Yeah.
I mean, he felt pretty good when it happened. But
And there's going to be some matchups where Servant of the Scale trades with, a Foundry Street Denizen and the token moves over to somewhere. You're going to have good turns with this card. It doesn't look very good right now, but it's a necessary evil, and sometimes it's going to be very good.
Matt opting to be the aggressor here. You see him swinging the Fleece main line, putting Steven down to 16. Steven now on his turn, fetching to 15. Matt opting to race, which he can do. He's on the play and has the larger creature. He certainly is ahead right now. Now, Steven has some ways to steal the race. We saw Become Immense plus Rangers Guile last game.
Matt can easily get draws here of covering out with Fleece Main Lion, maybe another, a Courser or Death Mist Raptor style threat, and then using the removal spells more as tempo plays to keep Steven from amassing much of the board and trying to finish off the game pretty quickly. Just because he's the control deck in the matchup doesn't mean that he has to necessarily play a long game.
Yeah, especially with something on the play, a Fleece Main Line into Courser of Krufix start. That's a very good racing hand. For Girdner, looks at his turn 3 play. It's going to be Death Mist Raptor. Squares off fairly well on this board. One key here for Matt, if he goes a control route, is he's going to want to try to save cards like Abzan Charms for those Death Mist Raptors. In this situation, he may be okay just using any kill spell on it and just continuing to be aggressive.
But that puts a lot of pressure on him to finish off the game quickly, because once Steven starts unmorphing, it undoes a lot of that work. So I agree with you. Ideally, Matt would like to exile these cards rather than put them in the graveyard if he can avoid it. If he's really on the beatdown plan, then that's what the plan is. You remove the Death Mist Raptor, but I'm sure Matt would prefer to exile it or find some more permanent workaround.
Course of Krufix gets a Windswept Heath for Matt off the top of the deck, shows another Fleece Main Line in waiting. These Fleece Main Lines can be pretty good, especially as he gets closer and closer to 5 mana. They're a great answer to Death Mist Raptor.
And a number of other cards. Steven does not have great answers to this other than he's got the one copy of Hunt the Hunter in his sideboard to take care of this preemptively, but not the easiest card for him to handle once he goes monstrous.
No, he's playing green. He doesn't kill things very often. Indestructible creatures will just become walls. Another interaction I do like in Steven's deck, and this is the way he actually can get through it, he has 4 copies of Den Protector along with 4 copies of Boon Satyr in his deck. That is actually a way to sneak by indestructible creatures like Fleece Main Lion.
Still not a card he wants to be playing against.
Right.
At least at this stage, when Steven's on the play, I think that he can probably get draws that are aggressive enough that force Matt to just trade it off early. But this game with Matt being the aggressor, very good chance he gets to go monsters with this, and then Steven already on the back foot's going to have a lot of problems attacking.
For Matt, turn 4, he's going to go ahead and crack fetch land. It means he won't draw the Fleece Main Line. Instead, next turn draw, I think an improvement here, End Hostilities. It doesn't fit in with his current game plan, but it's still one of his more powerful weapons here.
It's one of his best cards in the matchup, possibly his best card in the matchup, and if he's planning on going monsters with Fleece Main Line anyway, that's an excellent card to pair with a monstrous Fleece Main Line.
Yeah, and it feels maybe like we just saw him switch gears. He did have a card like, I believe, a Tassiger in his hand that he could have made, but instead made no play on turn 4, simply passed back to Steven. And yeah, maybe setting up to Monstrosity, Fleece Main Line, and then sit behind a sweeper.
Yeah. And I like that. I like the adaptation. It's just such a powerful line. It's probably going to keep Steven from doing anything here for 2 turns. And then Matt's going to have the powerful leftover in Fleece Main Line.
Draw from Matt is End Hostilities, shows Siege Rhino on top of the deck, so no free land for Courser. He does, however, have land 5 in hand. It comes into play untapped, so Fleece Main Lion can go monstrous. And with a sweeper in hand, I'd be surprised to see Matt do anything but activate the cat.
Yeah, I like going monstrous here in Steven's upkeep, most likely. It's the most efficient way to do it in the event that Steven has some way to interact and kill the Fleece Main Line in response, but In any event, I like Matt going monstrous with Fleeceman line either on his turn or sometime during Steven's turn.
And that's what he's going to do. Plays the 5th land, gains a life, and just passes. We're over to Steven. Steven plays land 5. Nothing else there. And now Matt will put a counter on Fleeceman line. It's now 4/4 and indestructible. So we go over to turn 6.
And what's so potent about this is Matt doesn't even have to make a move with end hostilities right now. He can simply continue to have the courser advantage here, generate some card advantage, and force Steven to play more and more to the board because as things stand, Matt can do this all day long. He does not have to make a move right now.
Yeah, draws a copy of Siege Rhino, shows Dromoka's command on top of the deck. The question is, how patient does Matt want to be? He can just play draw go indefinitely here.
I like having quite a bit of patience in this spot. Looks like Matt's just going to continue to develop the board with Siege Rhino here. I like having a lot of patience here because there's just no need to rush. And the longer and longer you wait, and the more likely you are to set up a turn of end hostilities and play Tassiker in the same turn. Plus, if you don't get a ton out of the end hostilities, it's possible that Steven can rebuild just with Den Protector. It's not like he needs some really specific cards to rebuild his board here. He's only got the 2 creatures in play.
Who knows? Maybe Matt draws another Fleecemane Lion. That would be, you know, if he just draws out the game, it'd be a great card.
Also, you know, all other things being equal, if I'm Matt, I'm kind of on the hunt for some more information too. I want the game to go on for a little bit longer, have Steven show me some more of the cards in his deck. Then you have more information. Is Drowning Sorrow going to be really good against him? Is it a card that maybe I should cut for game 3? What kind of tricks is he playing? I think you can extract a lot of information from Steven in the second game if you take your time.
Yeah. He also has draws like Elspeth's Sun's Champion he can make his way toward. So for Steven, he cracks another Fesha and plays land 6. Looks like forests numbers 7 and 8 are waiting in Steven's hand. He actually only plays 12 forests, so some flood here for him to be sure. The draw for Matt, Dromoka's command, shows Den Protector on top of the deck.
And if I'm Matt, I like basically just going, I'll attack you with Fleecemane Lion, say go. And have that be your path to win the game. And don't pull the trigger on any spell in your hand until Steven does something to make you do it.
Looks like he is going to be aggressive. Dromoka's command is going to have Fleecemane Lion fight down the Death Mist Raptor. Steven can use Ranger's Guile to protect the Death Mist here. And he will.
No, it looks like actually aspect of the Hydra to turn this in, to allow, the Death Mist Raptors to survive the fight.
So Raptor becomes a 6/6. It has 5 damage on it. The Fleecemane did get a counter to make itself into a 5/5. And we'll see if Matt wants to continue going. We're swinging here. Yeah, the 5/5 is going to turn sideways. With Matt at 25 and Steven all the way down to 11, this seems just fine.
Yeah. Attack with Fleecemane Lion here is completely safe. Remember, Matt still has end hostilities in hand, so there's only so badly these kind of exchanges can go for him.
Servant to the Scale will chump block the Fleecemane Lion, and it'll give its counter over to Death Mist Raptor. Steven's hand, 2 more forests, Ranger's Guile, Reverend Hunter. The pieces did not seem like they came together for him.
Steven just drew quite a bit of mana this game, and Matt had a draw that was much faster, much more aggressive than we saw in game 1.
Well, it really shows, I think, that the need of Steven to create pressure. Once we get to 5 mana, Matt's plays are very strong, whether they're a tap land and a Siege Rhino, Monstrosity and Fleecemane Lion, casting End Hostilities, maybe eventually even at 6 getting to the Elspeth in his deck. Steven needs to have some pressure on the board by turns 3 or 4. Otherwise, it's very unlikely that Matt won't have a play in his hand that can push the game in his favor.
Not all Den Protector decks are created equal, and Matt just has more powerful options to be getting out of his graveyard and plays a more powerful long game with cards like, you know, Elspeth and Hostilities and so forth. So even though Steven does have some staying power on the back of that package, Matt is still a huge favorite when we get to this stage of the game.
Steven's going to play the Reverend Hunter out of his hand. The Devotion will make it into a 4/4. But both those creatures will be left home to block as we go over to Matt, plays a Temple off the top of the deck, scries a land to the bottom, and shows Ultimate Price on top.
And this is the big difference. You know, when Matt is Den Protectoring back Ultimate Price, it's more powerful than Steven Den Protectoring back a creature.
And Ultimate Price, probably the best kill spell in the matchup for the Absalom midrange deck.
It's 2 mana and kills everything.
Matt still conservative. It's just Fleece Mane Lion attacking, but now it's a 5/5. We'll swing in, see whether or not Steven does block here. He does not. He'll go down to 6. And Matt's he does threaten lethal next turn if he plays. He threatens, as you mentioned, Ultimate Price and Den Protector in combination. Back to Steven. He'll play an Elvish Mystic. At 6. He can survive a couple turns, but with Matt at 26, it doesn't, and then Ultimate Price on top of the deck, it's unclear how Steven would get an offense going.
It's possible that Steven's doing the same thing that I suggested that Matt do earlier, which is just be on the hunt for information. Matt has a Courser in play, so Steven's going to get to look at quite a few cards here from Matt's deck, though perhaps fewer now with a Siege Rhino coming next turn. And Steven can pick up some valuable information. For example, he got to see End Hostilities this game via the Courser Crewfix, so now that's a card on his radar. And if you let the game play out for another turn or two, who knows what you're going to see. So I like Steven playing out, even though I think from this stage, him winning the game is a hopeless proposition.
Siege Rhino and Fleece Mane Lion will swing. Steven's going to have to put everything. He puts the Elvish Mystic in front of the cat, all his creatures in front of Siege Rhino. With that Ultimate Price, Matt can get. He can try to kill the Raptor here, then the Rhino will trample through the Reverend Hunter.
I think if Steven's willing to make this block, he likely has some way to protect one of his creatures. I wouldn't be surprised to see Ranger's Guile involved in this block if Matt goes and tries to use a removal spell. Remember, Steven knows about the Ultimate Price, so this is a really poor block if Steven has no trick here to respond to an Ultimate Price with.
Ultimate Price is going to be cast here from Matt. So the way Matt wants to do this is he wants to order the Reverend Hunter first, and then try to Ultimate Price the Death Mist Raptor. So I believe that's what happens. So now the Ranger's Guile will counter the Ultimate Price on Death Mist Raptor, but when we go to damage, Rhino still gets to trade with Reverend Hunter.
Right.
Elvish Mystic in the graveyard. No damage across there. But Steven with just the Death Mist now. You can see Matt with plenty of options. End Hostilities, Tasigur, Den Protector, just not using anything.
No need to. No need to show anything. He can keep his options open there with the Den Protector. Can loop a removal spell if he needs to.
It's very hard for Matt to lose from this situation. Okay, Steven's here checking the clock. He knows he wants to get extra information.
See, valuable pickup. Now you know your opponent's playing with at least 3 copies of Siege Rhino. This is a reward for playing it out. No,
he didn't.
You were
cut
uncertain
them.
before. Now you know.
From Matt's side, he'll cast End Hostilities to get rid of the Death Mist Raptor and his own Courser, and just attack with Fleece Mane Lion. Steven's down to 1. Matt has a Rhino in hand and a Rhino on top of the deck. That should just about seal this up.
I actually don't mind using the End Hostilities there from Matt's side, as it's just a way to avoid more information coming off the deck the next turn.
Draw here from Steven, and I was going to say we're on to game 3. No, he's going to play another blocker. He has Den Protector. That, and he has a Death Mist in hand, so he can keep this game going for a while. But
well, not through the
not
Siege
through
Rhino.
the Siege Rhino. Oh, right,
Yeah.
there is a Siege Rhino, so he's at 1.
He can block for a while, but Matt's not going to let him block again.
Not actually that many sources of life gain in the mono green aggro deck. He does have copies of Nylea's Disciple in his sideboard, but I doubt they've been brought in.
Yeah.
I don't believe he has any life gain here. And yeah, Matt says I'm just going to cast the Rhino, and we're on to game 3.
Matt with an early Fleece Mane Lion, that seemed really important in that game because it does a great job of blocking if Matt needs to take a defensive stance. It's great at attacking if Stevens draws a little bit slow, which is what happened there in game number 2. And going monstrous with it is something Steven does not have a great answer to. I mean, he can try to overpower it. He can, try to hunt the hunter it before it gets to that stage. But if Matt has a Fleece Mane Lion, isn't forced to block with it early, and gets to 5 mana, that's a very potent angle of attack against Steven's deck.
Yeah, and that's one of the things when you're the Abzan mid-range deck and you play a deck where all your cards just by themselves are so powerful, it lets you be very flexible with your role in the game. Now, the Abzan mid-range deck definitely, I think, identifies with the control deck in this matchup. But because cards like Fleece Mane Lion that you sometimes play defensively just as a 3/3 that trades is as powerful as it is, it means on a certain draw when you're on the play and have a turn 2 Lion and a turn 3 Courser, you can audible into an aggressive role as well. And you saw Matt do that. Hey, he had a good curve of creatures. Suddenly he has started attacking, and it really changed the tone of the game. Steven had a turn 3 Death Mist Raptor, but just couldn't attack with it. Not because there wasn't a good attack, but because he just couldn't afford to trade damage.
It's where a lot of the power comes from in these new builds of Abzan. You look at Fleece Mane Lion, Den Protector, Siege Rhino, Death Mist Raptor. These are both cards that are equipped at being very good attackers or very good blockers, depending on what Matt's needs are at any point in the game. In that game, they were used on the offense. I mean, really the only dedicated blockers in this deck are Courser or Krufix. I guess arguably Tassiker is more of an explicit control card, but the rest of his threat base is very flexible. And if he happens to get a draw of removal spells and cheap creatures, even though he's in control deck in the matchup, he can definitely become the aggressor, and that's exactly what happened in game 2.
Yeah, cards like Abzan Charm is very flexible in that position too. It can be a kill spell or a pump spell, or even a card drawer.
Yeah. I mean, Matt's got a lot of utility, a lot of flexibility with how to play the game. Steven really only has the one route. He's got his curve of creatures. He can try to be good against removal spells with his various tricks, especially Ranger Skiles, but he can't pivot into being a control deck. Even though he does have Death Mist Raptor and Den Protector, he's just not well suited to play that sort of game.
He has no kill spells. He has 32 creatures and 6 spells, so the plan is to play creatures and attack with them.
Yeah, and all the spells are pump spells.
Right. So, I am interested in some of the cards like Avatar of the Resolute. We haven't seen that one play yet, but I haven't seen that one cast in Standard yet.
Well, there's a lot of cards floating out here. It reminds me a little bit of Hero of Iroas, where you have one enabler that's obviously way above the curve for a particular deck. Is that enabler good enough to create a deck on its own?
Uncertain. Players here are going to get ready for Game 3. One thing, talking about all these different cards in Standard that we have is our SCG buy list. This is something we've been talking about. It's been updated recently. So with the Star City Games new buy list, if you remember in the past, selling cards oftentimes involved going to a large document full of lots of card prices, and you'd Control F to all your cards. Then you'd type what you wanted to sell into an email. You'd look up all the prices again, and then send it off, and then hope everything went well and that it would still work when you showed up to the event site. Well, no more. We now have the Star City Games interactive buy list, searching made easy, as you can search up the card you want to sell, complete with pictures, condition, foil, non-foil, rarity, language, a lot of things like that. And you can sell that online or in person.
Really expedites the process, much easier to find out quotes for the cards you want to sell. New pricing tools available for language and condition. A huge upgrade over our old buy list, starcitygames.com/buy list. To use it, you have to be registered for the website, but that's very easy to do and something you should probably just be doing anyway.
All right, well, we're underway. Game 3. This is Steven Girdner versus Matt Osborne Koch. Steven, our lone 9-0 player from day one with mono green aggro. He's on the play for the third game. Had no 1-drop, but looks like he's going to be making some plays on turn 2 here. Matt starting off on Sandstep Citadel.
Here's that we may have had a card dropped. But I love Avatar of the Resolute alongside Swordwise Centaur. It's just, this is what I need. One of these is a lot better than the other, but it is what it is. They only let you play with 4 Avatars of the Resolute, so this is what I gotta do.
A few years ago at the PT, I had the exact same thing with, I had a deck with had 4 Strangleroot Geists, and we really wanted 7, so then you just had to play Garruk's Companion, which is really not as good as Strangleroot Geist, but if you need enough of it, if you need one, you need one.
That's not strictly worse territory. I mean,
it holds a sword better if you had Sword of War and Peace.
Yeah, exactly. I'm saying those are at least different cards. It's no
this one's
it's no lightning bolt, chain lightning, lava spike of like multiple tiers of strictly worse.
For Steven, it looks like a slower start. Turn 2 is played with Elvish Mystic. And Matt will just play some tap lands. So once again, we see a double tap land start from Matt Osborne Koch. And game one, that got him far enough behind that he was never really able to recover. Now, there doesn't seem to be as much pressure coming from Steven Girdner this time.
No, this is a much slower start. I do believe that Steven has Death Miss Raptor, so that's something. But this is not the same explosive draw that we saw in game one.
It's interesting. I'm expecting the mono green aggro deck to just curve out, playing, a one drop into a 3-2 for 2 into a Reverend Hunter and just get lots of power into the table. But that's really not how his deck has played out.
Not so far. I mean, we saw little shades of that in game one. The Reverend Hunter was big and fast, but games 2 and 3 so far have been definitely slower starts.
Death Miss Raptor will be the turn 3 play from Girdner as he swings in for 1 with Elvish Mystic. Matt drops down to 19, and the turn will go back over to our Obzon mid-range player. Now the pressure's on him to make a play. As he draws Fleece Main Line for the turn, he'll have some options.
Fleece Main Line a little bit worse here for Matt. Turn 3 on the draw, then turn 2 on the play. Still good.
And he's going to go with a Death Mist Raptor of his own.
But it isn't the immediate pressing concern here that it was for Steven in game 2, where Fleece Main Line really pushed him out of the game early.
Elvish Mystic, the draw for Girdner. He has 2 more lands and another Mystic. Swing will be from Death Mist Raptor. That'll be a trade. Den Protector is in Girdner's hand, so he will be able to get his Death Mists back. He'll go ahead and let them trade.
This is a problem for Steven in the matchup. He's not really greasing the wheels with these Den Protectors very well. If he wants to do that, he has to get back a fetch land. He's not getting back a potent card.
Yeah, he'll play a Morph and pass the turn. Yeah, he'd like to get back something like an Aspect of Hydra, maybe another creature. His deck does seem to be playing off the top quite a bit. You see he's light on action here, and there's not a great way for him to find more.
Yeah.
But Den Protector is the Morph. He has 2 mana up to unmorph it. So we go over to Matt, plays a Temple on turn 4. Scry will keep a card on top. Has another 3-drop. This is Hero's Downfall. It'll go for the Morph. And, well, that'll force the issue. Steven will unmorph Den Protector, bringing Death Mist back into play, putting a fetch land into his hand, and then Downfall will take care of the Den Protector.
And it's not often you see someone downfall a Den Protector like that, but again, this is a function of Steven's graveyard just having not much action on it. Matt doesn't care all that much if Steven's getting back a Wooded Foothills or a Windswept Heath.
So you go back to Steven Girdner. 4 power in play. Has Become Immense, Ranger's Guile, Elvish Mystic, and lands. So he'll swing for 4. Now that Become Immense plus Ranger's Guile 1-2 punch, we saw that work to great effect game 1. And Matt will have to be careful of it.
Yep. Now that Ranger's Guile, 1 turn too late. If Steven had access to it last turn, it would have been awesome. Now not clear how it's going to be good, how good it's going to be in this game.
Steven going to go ahead and play that fetch land again, just trying to get all these lands out of his deck. We'll have an Elvish Mystic to put on the table, and then we're leaving him with the 2 pump spells. One thing though, Matt is still at a pretty decent life total here. He hasn't taken too much damage. And so Steven's going to go ahead and just Become Immense while Matt's tapped out. In this matchup, that's what the card is. It's just a burn spell. Might as well fire it while he can.
And now at this point, Steven really has to hope that Matt's hand is just removal spells, so this Ranger's Guile is able to go ahead and do something. Because if Matt starts cranking out blockers, I don't think Steven's got a great recourse given the cards in his hand.
Yeah, something like Siege Rhinos will be difficult for Steven's board to deal with. But he does have Matt down to 9. And as we know, there's only 1 copy of Become Immense in Steven's list, but if I was on Matt's side, I would definitely be worried that I was playing against a 3 or 4 Become Immense deck.
I think so too. I mean, you've seen these Wooded Foothills and Windswept Heaths with seemingly no other functionality. I would guess that there would be definitely more than 1 copy.
Well, so that's about how good it would be here, and that is going to be Siege Rhino from Matt Osborne Koch. Goes back up to 12, Girdner's down to 14. Rhino, such a great racer. And we go back to Girdner. He can't actually, he's going to swing Death Mist Raptor into Siege Rhino. See if Matt opts trade. It's not a great looking trade on the surface.
I mean, a trade here is so rough because if Steven has another Den Protector, that he's getting back Become Immense or another Den Protector and getting the Raptor back. But I also feel like Matt can't just take another hit when you've seen these many copies of Become Immense and so forth.
A second Den Protector is among the top draws for Girdner right now. I believe he does have a morph. I think he hit Rattleclaw Mystic for the turn.
Rattleclaw Mystic is not shabby either.
Really, any morph is going to be good for Steven as it gets back his Death Mist. So that is what it's going to be. It's going to be morph face down. Believe it is Rattleclaw. We go back to Matt. He did stay at 12 as he traded his Rhino off for Death Mist Raptor. And that really is, there's a show of uncertainty there for Matt. I think in a world where he's not as worried about multiple Become Immenses, maybe he's more inclined to take a hit from Death Mist Raptor there. The life totals were pretty close. He had a Siege Rhino with a follow-up threat. Maybe Matt can race.
I agree. I think it is somewhat of a function of Matt's uncertainty here, which I don't blame him for. I mean, he's not familiar with the mono-green aggro archetype, but game one he got killed from what seemed like a pretty comfortable position. You know, he was at 12 with a Siege Rhino and elected not to block a 5/5 and got killed.
Yeah, his opponent just Become Immense him when he was at 19. You're worried about a follow-up play like that.
And the other problem here for Matt now is he's probably working on the assumption that face-down morph is another copy of Den Protector. So now he's got to sequence his lines, assuming that the other Den Protector or the Become Immense could be coming back. You can see Matt's face there. He's moving his eyeballs over to Steven's graveyard. He's just working under the assumption right now that this is a Den Protector.
Yeah, Crux of Fate is in Matt's hand. I think that's going to be the play for the turn, destroying all non-dragons. This is going to be a pretty big relief for Matt because there's no way Steven can save any of his creatures. You can flip up, even flipping up Rattleclaw, there's no real reason to do it. It'll bring back Death Mist, but it would just die again. So Crux will resolve. Both Mystics hit the graveyard, and the board is clean for the time being.
If that card was a Den Protector instead, Matt would have been in huge trouble because that Den Protector probably gets back the other Den Protector, and then the loop starts all over again. Because it was Rattleclaw Mystic now, that's a big-time reprieve for Matt. I know that he has Fleecemane Lion left in hand if he's got 7 mana. Total this turn, he can play it and go monstrous. He just picked up a copy of Hero's Downfall, and you feel like Matt's getting closer and closer to having this thing stabilized.
Elvish Mystic, the play for Girdner. And land 7 for Matt. Does have Fleecemane Lion in hand. We saw before, this monstrosity Fleecemane Lion has been a great spot for Matt to sit behind. He's going to play it, has a Hero's Downfall in hand. Maybe he has turned the corner just now, but you said Den Protector could still undo all this work.
Yeah.
Draw from Steven, he'll pass. Fleecemane Lion now a 4/4 hexproof.
Well, the leftover in Matt's hands are so good right now. Den Protector plus Hero's Downfall.
It's going to be hard for Steven to get through. A lot of very generic answers. Looks like 2 Den Protectors in Hero's Downfall.
And a Raptor in his graveyard from many moons ago.
So here comes the Fleecemane Lion. It'll attack in for 4. Steven Girdner will drop down to 10. Den Protector played face down for Matt. He can leave up mana for the flip up to unmorph it or to cast Hero's Downfall. And back to our mono green player, 2 mana. That's going to be Avatar of the Resolute. Haven't seen him yet, but it is a little late for him.
Yeah, a little late to the party is exactly what I was going to say. This is one of the key incentives to build the deck that Steven's built here. And also justifies certain cards like Servant of the Scale, for example.
Are you attack with Elvish Mystic? Matt will go ahead and put the morph in front of it. And Steven will Aspect of Hydra. That's for 3. I don't think Steven has a great amount of faith that this will do much. It's Den Protector from Matt. That'll be a 3/2, so the trade won't happen, but it'll bring back Death Mist Raptor.
Yeah, Matt there had the option of just trying to use Hero's Downfall, but if Steven has Ranger's Guile, then he just loses the morph, which is way too risky.
Looks like Siege Rhino was brought back off the Den Protector. Yeah, Matt is just transitioning into a more aggressive game plan.
Same thing we saw in game 2. In game 2, it was from the jump point, but same deal. Matt playing defense until he's ready to go on the offense, and when he's ready to go on the offense, it does not take him that long.
And even now, you see some uncertainty on Matt's side, thinking, he really does feel ahead here, and he should. But there's this danger that Steven Rangers guiles and Become-Immenses him. You see Matt tries to downfall their avatar. That'll hit a Rangers guile.
I still think that Matt's in a position this turn to attack with both and play the Siege Rhino, and that's going to be hard for Steven to overcome.
Yeah, it's a lot of damage. I mean, Steven has... If he swung with both creatures, Steven would have to block. Otherwise, the Rhino would kill him. Swings with Fleeceman puts Steven to 6. Rhino puts him to 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think, right, a double swing forces the trade there, and getting Avatar off the board should cut off Steven's outs.
It's possible Matt just feels like my advantage is overwhelming here, and the only way I can lose is by some bizarre sequence of pump effects and what have you. And
so let's have another blocker.
Let's play a little bit of defense here.
Yeah, Surak the Hunt Caller, that's the play for Steven. He does have Formidable activated, so Surak will get haste. But Surak's going to have to be on defense. He'll pass back. And at 3 life, all the creatures have to be blocked. 1 kill spell should do it. Even without a kill spell, Steven's going to have to make some pretty ugly-looking blocks.
And this is, again, why I think that Matt was erring on the side of caution last turn. It's, if Steven's really got nothing, he can give him another turn. And after game 1, I would feel like there's probably some weird mixture of cards available in Standard that kill me from the spot with only 1 blocker. So
right.
Just hang back a little bit, wrap up the game next turn.
On Steven's Zen Step. Talked over to Matt. Has him at 3. Steven, 1 card in hand, 2 green mana up. Tassiger's the draw for Matt. See if he wants to go for the win here, or he can still play this conservatively.
I mean, if he has 8 mana, I believe Den Protector is one of his remaining cards, so he can simply unmorph a Den Protector, get back a downfall, and go for the kill that way.
Looks like that may just be the line. Plays Den Protector pre-combat. Swings all 3 of the creatures.
And he can still, before blocks, go ahead and downfall the creature that's blocking Siege Rhino and kill via trample damage if he's feeling so inclined.
We'll see. Yeah, these are the blocks Steven's forced into making. Surak will trade with Siege Rhino. Avatar will trade with Death Mist Raptor, but that won't happen for long because Matt has a morph in play. Elvish Mystic will jump in front of Fleece Mane Lion. At the very least, Matt can just let all these trades happen and then protect back the Siege Rhino. He has his opponent at 3.
Yeah, that
clears
way
away everything.
He gets the Death Mist Raptor back in that scenario.
Just trying to think if there's any way he could lose from this spot. I think you're right. I mean, getting back downfall does win. There's a lot of different ways when he's trying to decide the safest one.
Right. If he gets back, all right, now as the last card in hand, now he can go for it.
Ranger's Guile on the Siege Rhino. Yeah, last card in hand. Now he knows. Den Protector will flip up. It will get back. Hero's downfall. He'll downfall the Surak, and Matt Osborne Koch takes down Steven Girdner, the last undefeated player to move into a tie for first place.
And I like the patience there from Matt, because let's imagine that he goes for the downfall play inside of combat there and gets hit with the Ranger's Guile. He loses the Siege Rhino due to +1/+1. Surak now wins the fight. You're down your Death Mist Raptor, and now you can't get it back because you don't have a morph anymore. Yes, your board's still commanding, but in that scenario, Steven gets to untap with a Surak, and who knows what happens, so if he gets to draw a card there. So Matt rewarded by his patience there. His advantage was overwhelming. If Steven passes inside of combat and just lets the trade happen, Matt certainly wins the next turn. If Matt gets a little too ambitious there, who knows what's in Steven's hand, and maybe Steven's actually able to turn around and win that game somehow.
So for Steven Girdner in his mono green deck, it is his first loss of the tournament, but still sits in a great spot at 9-1. He's still tied for first place.
Yeah.